All right, time for more math. This is very similar today to what we were doing on math double dipping before the TCAPs. It looks a little bit different, but it's the same thing. It's just thinking through this. What we're doing today is looking at tenths and hundredths and being able to make equivalent fractions and then add them and find out how many hundredths we have on this first part. It's not very hard at all. First thing you got to do is make these tenths, hundredths. And how do we make a tenth, a hundredth? Do you remember we added a zero, didn't we? So if I was to write this out, 1/10 and 5/100ths, you can't add with unlike denominators, can you? So I've got to make this tenth a hundredth. How do I do that? Multiply by 10, or I add a zero. So 1/10 is the same as 10 hundredths, right? So 10 hundredths. And you can just write the decimal if you want to help you remember. I'm going to just do these four on this page so we can go back and add them. I've got 2/10 and 1/100th. 2/10 is how many hundredths? Because we've got to have all 100ths. Well, it's going to be 20. We add the zero. 1/10 is the same as 10 hundredths. Remember, we're just multiplying by 10 or adding a zero. So as we add these now, it's going to be much easier since we went ahead and made them hundredths. So if I have 10 hundredths and I add 5 hundredths, what's 10 plus 5? I would have 15 hundredths. If I have 20 hundredths, which is the same as 2/10, and add 100th, how many hundredths do I have? 20 plus 1 is 21 hundredths. On your assignment today, make sure you just put the number. Don't put like 21 over 100 because it already has the word hundredth there for you. If I have 10 100ths and I add 12 100ths, 10 plus 12 is 22 hundredths. That's pretty simple, isn't it? Just convert the tenths to hundredths and then add them. Okay, let's look at a few more examples. And this one tells us convert all add-ins, which are the numbers you're adding, to hundredths before solving. So we're going to do the same thing. 1/10, let's just add a zero this time. What's 1/10? It would be 10 hundredths, right? 10 plus 3 is 13 hundredths. Add a zero. 5/10 would be 50 hundredths. 5 plus 12 is 62. 7/10 would be, add a zero, 70 hundredths. 7 plus 27 is 97. 37 hundredths, it's backwards this time. 7/10, add the zero here. 7/10 is the same as 70 hundredths. Sorry, you can't see that. 37 hundredths and 70 hundredths would be 107 hundredths. Just add them together, okay? Now let's see what the next part says. Find the sum, convert the tenths to hundredths as needed. Write your answer as a decimal. We got to write it as a decimal this time. Okay, so don't forget to do that part. 2/10 is what? How many hundredths is that? That's 20 hundredths. 20 hundredths plus 8 hundredths is 28 hundredths, but we got to write it as a decimal, which looks like that, 28 hundredths. Okay, 13 hundredths plus 4/10. 4/10 would be 40 hundredths. So that's going to be 13 plus 40 is 53 hundredths. And as a decimal, we write 53 hundredths. 6/10, add the zeros, is the same as 60 hundredths. 60 hundredths plus 39 hundredths is 99 hundredths. As a decimal, we got to write them as decimals. Looks like 99 hundredths. 71 hundredths plus 3/10, add the zeros. 3/10 is the same as 30 hundredths. 70 plus 30 is 100 hundredths, which is equal to 1. We want to what? 1.0. That's fine. Okay. Some more. 9/10 is the same as, add our zeros, 90 hundredths. 90 plus 42. Oh, it's going to trick us now. 132 100ths. We got to decompose 100 100ths and 32 100ths. So This is 1 and 32 hundredths. 70 100ths plus 5 tenths. Got to make it 50 hundredths. 70 plus 50 is 120 hundredths. Decompose. 100 100ths and 20 hundredths. 100 100ths is 1 and 20 hundredths. All right, keep going. 68 hundredths plus 8 tenths. 8 tenths is the same as 80 hundredths. 68 plus 80. I'm doing this in my head. You may have to write it out. It's 148 hundredths. Decompose. Gives me 100 100ths. 48 hundredths. 100 100ths is 1. And 48 hundredths. 7 tenths. It's the same as 70 hundredths. 70 plus 87 is 157 100ths. Decompose. 100 100ths. 57 hundredths. This is the same as 1 and 57 hundredths. You got it? Do we have any more? We've got a word problem. Let's look at the word problem. Beaker A has 63 hundredths liter of iodine. It's filled the rest of the way with water up to 1 liter. Beaker B has 4/10 liter of iodine. It's filled the rest of the way up to water up to 1 liter. If both beakers are emptied into a large beaker, how much iodine does the large beaker contain? All right, so Beaker A has 63 hundredths of a liter of iodine. We want to know if we put these bottles together in a large beaker, how much iodine are we going to have all together? Beaker B has 4/10 of a liter. So we got to add these together. Okay. 4/10 is the same as 40 hundredths. Okay. 63 plus 40 is 103 100ths. Decompose. 100 hundredths and 3 hundredths. So the large beaker would contain 1 and 3 hundredths of a liter. That's it. That's your assignment for today. Not too bad, is it? I will let you get started. And if you have questions about it, ask me in the meet. See you then.